John McCain has been watching the same Republican debates that you and I have, and he's appalled. He's really angry because there's one key issue where John McCain has been consistently correct over the years, and this is an issue where many of his fellow Republicans are dead wrong. And he's going to come out here and give a fiery speech because he can't believe that we're really having this national debate about whether or not we should torture again.
That's why it's been so disappointing to see some presidential candidates engaged in loose talk on the campaign trail about reviving waterboarding and other inhumane interrogation techniques. It might be easy to dismiss this bluster as cheap campaign rhetoric, but these statements must not go unanswered because they mislead the American people about the realities of interrogation, how to gather intelligence, what it takes to defend our security, and at the most fundamental level, what we are fighting for as a nation and what kind of nation we are. It's important to remember the facts that these forms of torture not only failed their purpose to secure actionable intelligence to prevent further attacks on the United States and our allies, but compromised our values, stained our national honor, and did little practical good. While some have shamefully sought to minimize the practice of waterboarding, it is clear to me that this practice, which is a simulated execution by drowning, amounts to torture as any reasonable person would define it, and how the Geneva Conventions, of which we are signatories on the treatment of prisoners of war, defines it. The use of these methods by the United States was shameful and unnecessary because the United States has tried, convicted, and executed foreign combatants who employed methods of torture, including waterboarding, against American prisoners of war. Following World War II, Japanese generals were tried and convicted and hung, and one of the charges against them was that they practiced waterboarding. Contrary to assertions made some of the defenders, it produced little useful intelligence to help us track down the perpetrators of the September 11th attacks or prevent new attacks and atrocities. I know from personal experience that the abuse of prisoners will produce more bad than good intelligence. I know that victims of torture will offer intentionally misleading information if they think their captors will believe it. I know they will say whatever they think their torturers want them to say if they believe it will stop their suffering. Most of all, I know the use of torture compromises that which most distinguishes us from our enemies, our belief that all people, even captured enemies, possess basic human rights which are protected by international conventions the United States not only joined, but for the most part authored. We fight also for an idea that all men are endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. That's all men and women. How much safer the world would be if all nations believed the same. How much more dangerous it can become when we forget it ourselves, even momentarily, as we learn from Abu Ghraib.
For those of you who don't know, John McCain was actually tortured himself. He was tortured in Vietnam, and that's the reason he can't really raise his hands above, like, shoulder height. So, I mean, he knows this issue inside and out in intimate and gruesome detail, and every time it comes up, he cringes, because he says it, hey man, look, I think we're the good guys. So you can't do that, because then you're not the good guy. I mean, it's pretty simple when you boil it down. And McCain, I mean, we've spoken about him a million times, and there are other areas where, in my view, he has total blind spots. I mean, he really is a hawk, and he's in favor of intervening everywhere. Somebody once compiled a list of all the places John McCain wants to invade, and it's never ending. So don't get me wrong, he's not right in every respect, but on this one, is he correct? Oh, no question about it. Guys, torture oftentimes leads to false confessions. I mean, this is something I feel like we don't talk about enough. As McCain pointed out, what are you going to say? You're going to say whatever you think the person torturing you wants to hear. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. It means you're going to give them what they want to hear. So oftentimes people will be tortured and they say, yeah, I'm guilty of the crime. I did it. And they didn't do it, but they're just saying it so you stop fucking torturing them because they want the pain to stop. I mean, this is why, stuff like that, it would never be admissible in court. If you get information, yeah, I had fucking pliers hooked up to his nipples and I was twisting really hard. Well, I'm pretty sure that information is not to be trusted. The situation was not set for accuracy there. It seems like you're just trying to get out whatever you want. And we know from 9/11 and Iraq what happened. We tortured to get the answer, oh yeah, Saddam had something to do with it. And then we went in there and you know what we did and you know how that went. We got that information from torturing somebody and fishing for that answer. The Bush administration wanted that answer. And then we got it, and then we destroyed Iraq, and we did an unnecessary war, and hundreds of thousands of civilians died. So that's what we know torture got us. Here's what it didn't get us. Any useful information that prevented any attacks. This is in the Senate torture report, guys. They say not a single attack was prevented by this. You want to know why? You don't live in the fucking movie. You don't live in the movies, and you're not, in the show 24. You're not Steven Seagal. You're not Chuck Norris. This is the real world. And what happens when you allow torture is, it's not like you allow it and then, oh gosh golly, we somehow managed to only do it once, and in the one time we did it, it was the ticking time bomb scenario and we saved 1 million people. No, when you greenlight torture, overwhelmingly you're going to get the wrong people, and like I just said, there's no evidence we stopped any attack. So we know from what happened in Guantanamo, you can't trust the government to always get it right with no oversight and no process set up. This is the whole point of due process. The people who love small government should be the most on the side of course I don't want the government to torture. Why? You're going to trust the government that every single person that they bring in is an enemy combatant or whatever, and that they torture. Oh, we know that's a bad guy. It's not like we have people in the middle of a firefight shooting and they capture him and then they take him away and then they prevent a terror attack by torturing him. No. What happened is with Gitmo, as I've explained before, the Bush administration cut a deal with Pakistan and Afghanistan, the governments there, and they just shipped us people who they told us were Al-Qaeda. Of course, they weren't Al-Qaeda. They were totally innocent. They were just people who were enemies of the state in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And then we tortured them and kept them locked up with no trial, and then we ended up being the criminals. This is why you need due process. This is why you need a constitution to prevent this stuff from happening. Due process is not just there for shits and giggles. It's there to try to adjudicate and figure out whether or not said person is guilty of a certain crime. And finally, let me just say this, man. You are what you do. You are what you do. So if you're a nation that tortures, you're a nation that tortures. Your government tortures. Your actions define who you are. It's not, nobody gets to say, I'm the good guy no matter what, so now I get to do whatever I want, just declare myself the good guy. No, but what actions have you taken, and then we will evaluate whether or not you're the good guy based on those actions. Because here's the deal. Everybody thinks they're the fucking good guy. I got news for you. In Japan, when it was World War II, when we were fighting them, and as McCain was telling the story there, how they waterboarded our guys, what, you don't think they thought they were the good guys? Perhaps they were torturing to try to figure out if there was going to be a nuclear bomb dropped on, say, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where hundreds of thousands of civilians would die immediately. So, of course, everybody thinks they're the good guy. So then, if everybody thinks that and everybody claims that, how do you determine who's really the good guy? Look at the record. And it's the people who uphold their values, even when the times are rough, that are the real good guys. Because they're the ones who have done the right thing with constitutional rights and human rights, and they've said, this one's off the table. We never violate these things, because once you go down that path, there's no turning back.